TRA meeting, and my name is Lindsay DeMonch, and I'm honored to show you what I do when I paint on burlap. And a little bit about myself. I am a local artist. I was born here in North Carolina, in Newburgh, North Carolina, and I'm a children's book illustrator. I graduated from the Savannah College of Art and Design, and these two children's books right here. First one is Where There's Will, There's a Way, written by Lindsay, and she's right here with us. So Linda, you can stand up. Oh, so that works. This is Lindsay, she's the author of this book. And the second one is Kids Are Like Crocodiles, written by Kevin McCracken. And Carol McCracken, some of you may know Carol, she and I worked together on this book as well. So give it a look here. I do multiple mediums. I do watercolor, I do felting, I do pottery, I do a lot of mediums. I tend to have art ADD, I can't settle on anything. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and show you the process of both burlap and metal. So the first thing I want to say is that burlap can be bought at Michael's. You can order it online in a roll. It can be mounted, or if you don't want it to be mounted, what I would suggest is that if you paint on burlap, I would have like a foam core board with a plastic around it and then stretch it, and I would put tape on the back. Just so that way it's stretched and it doesn't warp, because if you just paint it when it's loose, it does tend to warp a little bit. It will warp your image. So if you want it mounted, I'm going to show you real quick what it's going to look like. Burlap is a very loose material. It's not like a canvas where it's more tight knit, it's been prepared and all that. It tends to have like these holes that are right through there. And as you can see, it's kind of loose. And of course, kind of like a canvas where you have gesso on top of it. You don't want to paint on the burlap unprepared. You don't want it where it's, doesn't have anything on top of it to protect the material at hand. Paint on it. So this is stage one. This is the first stage when you mount it. So the second stage. The second stage is tightening and using binding medium to stiffen your burlap. Now it doesn't seem anything's changed, but it's much stiffer. You can hear it. So if you compare, see how kind of loose it is? It's like kind of flapping. The second one, you can hear a sound like a drum. That's how tight you kind of want it to be, where it sounds like a drum. Kind of like that, yeah. The second stage. So the items I used, there is a product called Canvas Tight. And what this is a binding medium. What this is used for is if any of you have a canvas and you have another canvas laying on top of it, and it makes a divot in your canvas, and you're like, oh gosh, what do I do? How do I get that out? This is what this is for. It's a binding medium. You coat the back of it with a sponge or with a brush, and it takes about 8 hours to dry. I would wait a little longer in case, but Canvas Tight is by Speedball, Mona Lisa. If you cannot find this, because I know sometimes art supplies come and go, as it happens sometimes, a secondary thing I would use in case I don't find it is matte medium gel Liquitex. And I'll put all the supplies on the PDF format, or on the PDF document, sorry. So, matte medium gel, if you ever used gel before, you use it in paint, in acrylic paint. So, say if you have really thin paint, and you're like, how do I thicken it up? I want it to be kind of a bit pastel. That's where medium gels come in. So if you want it to be where it's much thicker, you get matte medium gel, medium or heavy. And that means like it's thick paste. It's like a thick paste. For this one, however, I use it as soft. Soft is where it's more liquefied. I would use that and put about 2 coats of it in the back, give it about 24 hours to dry, and then it will stiffen right back out. So the third process, after everything's said and done, I stiffen the back, and I would still have to prepare the front. So with the matte medium gel, so there's step 2, 3, and 4 on this one. So the third step, after I kind of coat the back, after it's dry, then I use the matte medium gel again. I coat it about 2 times, because what that happens is it kind of plugs in all of like the little extra holes that are in here. So in case this kind of doesn't do it in the back all the way, I put 2 coats of matte medium gel. This really stiffens up. Can you hear it? Yes. So it's kind of like really soft. Having those 2 coats makes it stiff, and it really makes it stronger. So after that dries, then here comes the gesso. Oh yes, all the painters know what gesso is. If you ever see why, if you ever know why that they put gesso on canvas, is to protect the cloth. You can't paint on canvas right away without gesso. What happens is, like, if you paint on it without it, it absorbs in the cloth, and sometimes it weakens the binding of the canvas. Same thing with burlap. You want to put it through with gesso first, so it protects it, and you can see your colors a lot better, and it protects your burlap cloth. So after everything's said and done, I prepared everything to get ready for painting. So I take a Sharpie. What Sharpies do, now some of you may agree, some of you may not agree, it depends, each person's different. I use a Sharpie because it bleeds through a little bit so I can still see my lines. However, you may at one point say, well, what if I'm at a point where I don't want it to bleed through anymore? Well, what comes in next is workable fixative. You will see, like, people that work in pastels, chalk pastel or oil pastels, you need something where it's on loose mediums like chalk. You need it to be binded so that you can still work on top of it. When you spray a coat of workable fixative, that way it'll seal in the Sharpie, and then that way it won't bleed through anymore. All right. Now, when you go to sprays, be very careful. Anybody with asthma or has breathing problems, make sure you wear a mask. You want to always make sure to protect yourself first before you ever start painting or anything like that. I'll be talking more about that when we get to the metal part. The third part is the painting. I'm going to do a little demo on the painting part. So, it's a very rough surface. If you ever worked with watercolor, they have different kinds of paper. There's cold press, that's a little bit bumpy, hot press, where it's much smoother. Then they have a rough watercolor paper. Very similar to a rough watercolor paper. That's just kind of how it is with painting, or with what I've experienced so far. And when you paint, it's more of a sponge-like application than it is like with a canvas where it's just going back and forth. Now I'll show you right now. There we go. All right, so let me get brushes. Water. All right, and I have my paint back here, and this is my palette at the moment. All right, so when everything's said and done, I worked out my colors. I'm going to take maybe some of the magenta here. I'm going to get up close so you can hear the sound. So, because this is much rougher, it's like a sponge and stroke technique is what I use for my burlap. And maybe I'll mix it with the blue. Like a purple to kind of tone down the magenta. Alright, can everybody see? I just want to make sure that I'm not like too low or too high. Alright, perfect. So you see here, like after everything's said, you'll hear it. It's much stiffer. So as you work with it, it's really fun. It's really fun because I usually like to leave a border when I do burlap, just so you can see the burlap, kind of get an idea of the texture of the burlap. I've seen where like they cover the whole thing up, and I'm like, well, you don't really get the idea that it's burlap when it's all covered in the edges. So that's why I kind of leave a border of sorts, just so it's like it kind of gives it a different aesthetic to your painting. And at the end, you're more welcome to come up and look at the materials here and touch it. And if you want to paint a little bit on it, you're more than welcome to do so. So after the paint, I use acrylic paint before I proceed further. I use acrylic paint, I use Liquitex or craft paint, anything you want to use. The burlap will take almost any medium here. And I want to also introduce to you these new products as well. I'm going to introduce acrylic markers. They're coming out with these now, and they're really nice because what they came out originally for is for graffiti. I don't condone street art that's illegal, but if you want to give it a try on a canvas, here's what these are. The two products are Montana, and I'll show you what it looks like here. So you shake it up, it's almost like spray paint. So you shake it up, it'll mix the paint, and then you can stamp it. It looks like a marker. And I was first introduced to these in SCAD, and a lot of people that worked in graphic design or signs, when people create signs, and you can put it on, it's great on chalkboard. If you were to design like a chalkboard for somebody, what these are water-based markers, and they come in chiseled. Some of it are more round tip, like so. It's more rounder tip. And if you wanted to refine certain edges, that's really nice to have. If you don't want to use the brushes, and you're like, how do I get to there? And currently I'm working at a place called Cilantro's. I'm doing their signs and their chalkboard menus. So that's going to be opening next to the Country Biscuits. So check it out when it opens. It's going to open in April. All right. So a couple more things here. I don't know if any of you have been introduced to these yet. These are also kind of like ink. These are more ink-based though. This is gold marker and Sakura white marker. And I like to use these for highlights or just to add accents, like small gold accents. And you can find a lot of these at Michael's, and you can order them online as well. And this is what it looks like. It's very thin. But say, for example, if there's an area of interest and you want to really bring out, and you're like, well, I want to do gold leaf, but that's such a tiny area, I can't really use all of that. This is kind of what this is for. So if you want to go in certain areas and kind of add that in, and I don't know if you can see it kind of glitters. Can you everybody see that? Yeah. So this is really nice to have. I usually put these in the wings of my bees. I don't know if you can see right here, in the wings mostly. I just kind of very subtly add little touches here and there. Alright. So there's that. And the white marker is the same if you want to add highlights. So if you want to add small little highlights here and there. Make sure I bring it up. I'm running out of ink on this one. But these are really nice for small details, just to add accents. Alright. So after the painting part, usually I kind of like to do some outlines here and there, just to really accentuate my paintings. And this was a gift from my mom. She's from Topeka, Kansas originally. She's not in Kansas anymore. So I added an outline. And technically what I do is I'm a mixed media artist. I like to experiment with different mediums. I like to see what else I can do to really bring something else to the next table and then teach it. I love teaching. I teach at Light of Design, I teach at the Call Gallery, I teach at other places if they need me. And what I have here, let's see, not this one. There we go. Micron pens. And Micron is archival,